Top 10 cases of human cannibalism and their causes. Number 10. Willingness to gain publicity. While most of the history of cannibalism was due to a desperate struggle for survival, in 10th place is a peculiar case. The Canadian sculptor Rick Gibson noticed the lack of legal solutions for cannibalism in the UK. In 1988, he ate an appetizer consisting of human tonsils. A year later, he ate a legally obtained slice of human testicle. He tried to do it again the next year in Canada, but the police interrupted his performance. Number 9. Donner's Expedition. It is one of the best known examples of cannibalism in history, born from a dire survival situation. In 1846, a group of pioneers were led by George Donner to the west coast of America. They took a difficult route, which first crossed 128 kilometers in the arid desert. In November, they reached a point from which there was no return, the Sierra Nevada mountain range. Unexpectedly, early snowfalls caused them to be stuck in the mountain for 16 weeks. When they were finally reached by rescuers from California, the pioneers had barely managed to survive. First, they ate their supplies, but when they ran out of things and began to look desperate, they ate their dogs and eventually were forced to eat the remains of the dead members of their expedition. Number 8. Siege of Leningrad. Nowadays, St. Petersburg is considered to be the battle with the highest number of victims in its history. Estimates indicate that during the siege, up to 4.5 million people may have died. The blockade by Leningrad by the German army and its allies on the Eastern Front of World War II began on September 8, 1941 and lasted 872 days. The first cases of cannibalism from hunger were recorded 4 months after the beginning of the siege. NKVD reports that all these issues were published in 2004. For a year, the authorities arrested over 2,000 cannibals for eating the corpses that were a prison sentence and for killing a man to eat him. Death penalty. Number 7. Richard Parker. This is the first point on our list which leaves no doubt that a person eaten by his or her traveling companions was murdered. In 1884, the midgenet traveled by ship from England to Australia. 2,600 kilometers from Cape Good Hope, the yacht fell victim to a massive storm with 4 crew members surviving. They hit on a small rescue boat. After 19 days of hunger and struggles for survival, Captain Richard Parker decided that the weakest of them, a 17-year-old teenager, would serve as a meal. The rest agreed to it. Parker stabbed the boy in his neck and killed him. The crew ate his body and drank his blood. After 5 days, they were found and sentenced for murder and cannibalism, but just 6 months later, they were all released from prison. Number 6. War in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The horrifying truth about the Second Civil War in Congo, the bloodiest armed conflict since the end of World War II, was revealed in 2003, the year of its official end. It was then that the UN envoys investigated and gradually determined the existence of cases of cannibalism in Ittar, which is a region not under control. Several rebel groups fought there and 2 rebels were kidnapped by locals with the support of Uganda. They were sent to the forest in search of valuable metals and food. When they returned empty-handed, they were killed and eaten. Number 5. Fugitives from the Dominican Republic. In November 2008, undocumented immigrants on the boat from the Dominican Republic to Puerto Rico were forced to eat their companions after the ship had lost its course. Each of the 33 people paid up to $1,800 for a 250-kilometer or 150-mile trip on a wooden fishing boat. After a day and a half, the engines refused to cooperate and the boat began to drift. After 2 weeks, 27 out of the 33 people were dead, which was caused by dehydration and starvation. The other passengers decided to eat some of the deceased to delay their own demise. The American Coast Guard found them the day after. Number 4. Willingness to earn money. In April 2012, the Brazilian police arrested 3 people suspected of killing 2 women. They confessed to killing and then eating their victims. They ate them by making their bodies into stuffing for empanadas in a truly grotesque move, then sold those empanadas to locals. Arrested in the city of Guarujans, they declared that they were members of a cult and a mysterious voice ordered them to kill women who were evil. Number 3. The Korowai tribe. In 2006, Australian journalist Paul Raffaelli was immersed among the Korowai people of Papua New Guinea. People live there in exceptional isolation and their everyday life is surrounded by mystery. Raphael argued that the Korowai were still eating human meat to this day. He told us that his film crew was visited by a man who was afraid for his nephew's life. However, it is not entirely clear whether this is true, as the journalist and his team were quickly evacuated from the area after the case had arisen. The fact is that in 2012, the country's authorities charged 29 members of the tribe with murder and cannibalism against 7 magician doctors, who were supposed to give supernatural powers after being eaten. Number 2. The Great Famine in North Korea. The worst period in North Korea's history was in the 1990s, when the collapse of the Soviet Union led to enormous poverty and thus famine and cannibalism. North Korea is shrouded in secrecy. Thus, most accounts of life in the Hermit Kingdom come from escaped refugees. In April 2013, Sung Min-jeong, a 44-year-old refugee, talked about everyday life in North Korea and the famine that forced people to murder and eat their loved ones. This is not the only story like this. In the same year, the world heard of a man subjected to the death penalty in North Korea for murdering his daughter in the absence of his wife. When his wife returned home, he simply stated, "We have something to eat." Number 1. The Andes plane crash. This is probably the most famous and best documented account of cannibalism. On October 13, 1972, as a result of both bad weather and human error, the Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 with 44 people on board crashed over the Andes. Some of the passengers managed to survive, but this was only the beginning of a very long struggle to survive. In the mountains, at an altitude of over 3,600 meters, temperatures reached -40 degrees, and snow made it impossible to move around or find food. This forced the survivors to eat the bodies of those who didn't make it. In part, due to their cannibalism, they managed to survive for 72 days until they were rescued. Thanks so much for watching this video. Go ahead and like this video, comment down below, and hit that subscribe button.